Every morning at 4 o'clock, while the city of Manila still slept under a blanket of darkness, a woman named Maria would wake up in her tiny apartment. She would splash cold water on her face, tie her gray hair into a neat bun, and put on the same faded blue uniform she had worn for more years than she cared to count. Then she would walk 30 minutes through empty streets to reach the most beautiful building in the city, the National Concert Hall. Maria was 63 years old. Her hands were rough from decades of hard work. Her back ached when the weather changed. She walked with a slight limp from an old injury that never healed properly. To anyone who passed her on the street, she looked like exactly what she was: a cleaning woman. Nothing more. Nothing less. And that is how the world had seen her for 33 years. She would arrive at the concert hall before anyone else. The security guard would nod at her without really looking at her face. He had worked there for 15 years and still did not know her last name. To him, she was just the old woman with the mop. To the managers, she was employee number 247. To the famous musicians who performed on that grand stage, she was invisible. They walked past her 1,000 times, without ever wondering if she had a story of her own. But Maria did have a story. Everyone does. The difference is that some stories get told, and others get buried so deep that even the person living them starts to forget. Her story began in a small village 3 hours outside Manila. She was born into a family that had nothing except love and hope. Her father worked in the rice fields. Her mother took in laundry from wealthier families. They lived in a house made of wood and tin, where rain would leak through the roof, and they would place buckets on the floor to catch the water. But there was one thing in that house that did not belong to poverty: a piano. It was an old, upright piano that had belonged to Maria's grandmother. Nobody knew how her grandmother had gotten it. Some said she had worked for a wealthy Spanish family decades ago and they had given it to her when they left the country. Others said she had saved money her entire life just to buy it. The truth died with her grandmother. But the piano remained. Maria first touched those keys when she was 4 years old. Her grandmother placed her tiny fingers on the white and black keys and showed her a simple melody. And something happened in that moment, something that Maria would never be able to explain with words. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her, as if music had always lived inside her and was finally finding a way out. By the time she was 7, Maria could play songs she had only heard once. By the time she was 10, she was performing at local churches and community gatherings. People would travel from other villages just to hear the little girl with the magical hands. Her grandmother would sit in the front row, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks, whispering prayers of gratitude. When Maria was 12, a music teacher from Manila visited their village. He heard Maria play, and his face turned pale. He pulled her parents aside and spoke to them in urgent whispers. "This child," he said, "is not ordinary. This child has a gift that comes once in a generation. She needs proper training. She needs to study at a real music school. She could become one of the greatest pianists this country has ever seen." Her parents did not know what to say. They were simple people. They did not understand words like prodigy or conservatory. But they understood the look in their daughter's eyes when she played. They understood that music was her air, her water, her reason to breathe. So they made sacrifices. Her father worked double shifts. Her mother took in more laundry until her hands cracked and bled. Her grandmother sold vegetables at the market every single day. Even when she was sick, all the money they saved went toward Maria's lessons with a real piano teacher in the city. For 2 years, Maria traveled to Manila every weekend. She studied music theory, technique, and history. She practiced until her fingers were sore. She dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. She dreamed of making her grandmother proud on the biggest stages in the world. And then, in one terrible week, all those dreams turned to dust. Maria was 14 years old when her father collapsed in the rice field. They said it was his heart. By the time they carried him home, he was already gone. Maria did not get to say goodbye. She did not get to tell him that she loved him. She did not get to play for him one last time. The funeral was small and quiet. They buried him in the village cemetery under a mango tree. And when the last prayers were said, Maria looked around at her family. Her mother, broken by grief, her 5 younger siblings, the youngest only 3 years old, and she understood, with a clarity that no 14-year-old should ever have to feel, that her childhood was over. There would be no more piano lessons. There would be no more dreams of concert halls. There would be no more music. Because now, she was the one who had to work. She was the one who had to help feed 5 hungry mouths. She was the one who had to become an adult before she was ready. Maria did not cry when she made this decision. She did not scream or ask why life was so unfair. She simply folded up her dreams like an old dress, placed them in a corner of her heart, and walked forward into her new life. She found work in Manila as a house helper when she was 15. She sent money home every month. She watched her siblings grow up, go to school, and build lives of their own. She watched them get married and have children. She became the aunt who always brought gifts during holidays, the sister who never complained, the daughter who called her mother every Sunday without fail, and somewhere along the way, she stopped thinking about music. Or at least, she tried to. When she was 30 years old, she got the job at the National Concert Hall. It was just another cleaning job at first, but on her first day, when she walked into that magnificent building and saw the grand piano sitting on the stage, something inside her cracked open. It was a Steinway, black and shining under the lights, the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. She stood frozen for a long moment, her mop dripping water onto the marble floor. Memories flooded back, her grandmother's hands guiding hers, the smell of the old upright piano in their village home, the feeling of music flowing through her like a river. A security guard shouted at her to get back to work. Maria blinked, apologized, and returned to her mopping. But from that day on, she requested to be the one who cleaned the main stage. Every single day, she would dust that piano. She would wipe down its keys with a soft cloth, and sometimes, when she was absolutely sure no one was watching, she would let her fingers hover just above the keys, so close she could almost feel the music waiting inside. But she never pressed down, not once in 33 years. Because that piano was not for people like her. That stage was not for cleaning women. That world of music and applause and beautiful dresses belonged to others. She had accepted this truth long ago, or so she thought, because life has a strange way of giving second chances to those who have forgotten they ever wanted one. And Maria's second chance was coming. In the form of something broken, something discarded, something nobody else wanted, just like her. It was a Thursday evening in October when the truck arrived at the back entrance of the concert hall. Maria was finishing her shift, gathering her cleaning supplies and getting ready to walk home. She heard the commotion near the loading dock and went to see what was happening. 2 delivery men were struggling to unload something heavy from the truck. When they finally got it down, Maria saw what it was. A piano. But not like the grand Steinway on the main stage. This one was an old upright, and it looked like it had lived a very hard life. The wood was scratched and faded. There was a crack running along one side like an old scar. Some of the keys were yellow with age, and a few were chipped at the edges. The whole thing leaned slightly to one side, as if it was tired and wanted to lie down. The assistant manager came out to inspect it. He was a young man in an expensive suit, who always walked too fast and talked too loud. He looked at the piano, the way someone might look at a dead rat. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked the delivery men. "Donation," one of them replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Some old lady passed away. Her family wanted to give her piano to the concert hall." The assistant manager laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "We cannot accept this. Look at it. It is practically falling apart. Half the keys probably do not even work." He was right. Maria could see that from where she stood. But still, something about that piano called to her. Maybe it was the way the evening light fell across its worn surface. Maybe it was the way it seemed so alone and unwanted. Or maybe it was because Maria knew exactly what it felt like to be something that people looked at and saw nothing of value. "Take it to the garbage area," the assistant manager ordered. We will have it hauled away tomorrow. The delivery men shrugged and started pushing the piano toward the back of the building where all the trash was collected. Maria watched them go. Her heart was beating strangely fast. Her hands felt restless, the way they sometimes did late at night when she could not sleep. Before she knew what she was doing, she called out, "Wait." Everyone turned to look at her. The delivery men, the assistant manager, a few other workers who had gathered to watch. Maria felt her face grow hot. She was not used to people looking at her. She was used to being invisible. "What is it?" the assistant manager asked, impatient. Maria's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Can I have it?" There was a moment of silence. Then the assistant manager laughed again, and this time a few others joined him. "You want this piece of junk? What would you even do with it?" Maria did not answer. She could not explain it to them. She could not tell them about her grandmother, about the village, about the 14-year-old girl who had put away her dreams to feed her family. She could not tell them that for 33 years she had been cleaning a piano she was not allowed to touch, and that something inside her was dying a little more each day. So she just stood there, quiet, waiting. The assistant manager shook his head like she was crazy. "Fine, take it. It is garbage anyway, but you have to arrange your own transport." "We are not delivering trash to people's homes." Maria nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, she used almost all of her savings to hire a small truck and 2 men to move the piano. It took them nearly an hour to get it up the narrow stairs to her apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building in Tondo. The neighbors came out to watch, confused and curious. Children followed behind, asking questions that Maria did not know how to answer. When the piano was finally inside her tiny living room, it took up almost half the space. She had to move her small dining table against the wall just to fit it. The men left, and Maria was alone. She stood in front of the piano for a long time. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the neighborhood, motorcycles passing by, street vendors calling out their prices, dogs barking somewhere in the distance, the television from the apartment next door playing a game show. But inside her small room, everything was quiet. Maria reached out and touched the piano. The wood was rough under her fingers, nothing like the smooth, polished surface of the Steinway at the concert hall. She ran her hand along the top, feeling every scratch, every dent, every mark that time had left behind. Then she sat down on a plastic chair she had placed in front of the piano. There was no proper piano bench. There was no proper anything, just a broken piano, a plastic chair, and a 63-year-old cleaning woman whose hands were shaking. She placed her fingers on the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. She just sat there, frozen, feeling the cool surface of the ivory beneath her fingertips. Memories rushed through her mind. Her grandmother's voice, her father's smile, the little girl she used to be, so full of hope and dreams. And then, slowly, she pressed down. The first note rang out into the room. It was slightly out of tune, but it was real. It was music. After 33 years of silence, Maria was playing again. She tried a simple scale first. Some keys worked perfectly. Others made a dull, dead sound, like they had given up long ago. A few did not make any sound at all. The piano was broken, incomplete, imperfect. But Maria did not stop. She began to play around the broken notes. Where a key did not work, she skipped it or found another way. Where the sound was dull, she pressed softer or harder to coax out whatever music remained. It was like solving a puzzle, like learning a new language, like dancing around obstacles in the dark. And slowly, something beautiful began to emerge. She played a piece she had learned when she was 12 years old, Chopin, a ballade that her old teacher had said was too difficult for her age, but she had practiced it anyway, night after night, until her fingers knew every note by heart. She had not played it in over 4 decades. She thought she had forgotten, but her hands remembered. They remembered the way her grandmother used to hum along. They remembered the feeling of her father standing in the doorway, listening quietly after a long day in the fields. They remembered everything that Maria had tried so hard to forget. Tears began to fall down her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. She just kept playing. The music filled her tiny apartment and floated out through the thin walls. In the apartment next door, a woman cooking dinner stopped stirring her pot and listened. Across the hallway, an old man turned down his radio. On the street below, children stopped their games and looked up at the window where the strange, beautiful sound was coming from. Maria did not know how long she played. Minutes, hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. All that existed was the music and the memories and the tears that would not stop falling. When she finally lifted her hands from the keys, the room was dark. Night had come without her noticing. Her fingers ached. Her back was stiff. Her eyes were swollen from crying. But for the first time in 33 years, Maria felt alive. She looked at the broken piano in front of her. This discarded thing that nobody wanted. This piece of garbage that people had laughed at. "Thank you," she whispered to it. "Thank you for waiting for me." Outside her window, the city continued its noisy life. Cars honked. People shouted. Music played from distant bars. Nobody knew that something extraordinary had just happened in a tiny apartment in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Manila. Nobody knew that a woman had just found something she thought was lost forever. But they would know soon. Because in the apartment next door, a teenage girl had heard everything. And she had an idea that would change Maria's life in ways neither of them could imagine. The girl who lived next door to Maria was 17 years old. Her name was Rosalie, but everyone called her Rosa. She was in her final year of high school and spent most of her free time on her phone like every other teenager in the world. She watched videos, scrolled through social media, and dreamed of a life beyond the crowded streets of Tondo. Rosa had lived next to Maria for 5 years. In all that time, she had never really paid attention to the old woman. Maria was just the quiet neighbor who left early in the morning and came home tired at night. They would nod at each other in the hallway sometimes. That was all. But on the night Maria brought home the broken piano, everything changed. Rosa was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone, when she heard it. At first, she thought it was coming from a video someone was playing too loud. But then she realized the sound was coming through the wall. From the apartment next door, from the old cleaning woman's home. She sat up and listened. The music was unlike anything she had heard before. It was sad and beautiful at the same time. It made her chest feel tight in a way she could not explain. Some notes were missing, and the sound was not perfect, but somehow that made it even more powerful. It was like listening to someone's heart break and heal at the same time. Rosa pressed her ear against the wall. She could hear the music more clearly now. And she could hear something else too, crying. The old woman was crying while she played. For the next 3 days, Rosa listened every night. Maria would come home from work, and after an hour or so, the music would start. Sometimes it was soft and gentle. Sometimes it was fast and passionate. Sometimes it stopped suddenly, and Rosa would hear nothing but silence for a long time before it started again. On the 4th night, Rosa made a decision. She waited until the music started, then quietly stepped out of her apartment. Maria's door was old and did not close properly. There was a gap at the bottom, and if Rosa crouched down, she could see a sliver of the room inside. What she saw made her hold her breath. Maria was sitting at the piano in near darkness. The only light came from a small lamp on a table nearby. Her eyes were closed. Her gray hair had come loose from its usual bun and fell around her shoulders. Her face was wet with tears, but there was something else there too. Peace, joy, something Rosa had never seen on the old woman's face before. And her hands. Those rough, work-worn hands that Rosa had seen carrying mops and buckets were dancing across the keys like they belonged there. Like they had always belonged there. Rosa took out her phone. Her hands were shaking slightly. She did not know why she felt like she was witnessing something sacred, something private, something that was not meant for her eyes. But she also felt like the world needed to see this. People needed to know. She pressed record. For 3 minutes, she filmed Maria playing. The old woman never knew. She was lost in her music, lost in her memories, lost in a world that existed only between her and the piano. When the piece ended, Rosa stopped recording and crept back to her apartment. She sat on her bed and watched the video. Even on her small phone screen, even with the poor lighting and the sound coming through a cracked door, it was beautiful. It was heartbreaking. It was real. She thought about what to do. Part of her felt guilty for recording without permission. Part of her worried that Maria would be angry. But another part of her, the part that had watched thousands of videos and knew what moved people, understood that this was something special. She wrote a simple caption. "The cleaning lady in our neighborhood. No one knew she could play like this. She is 63 years old and just got this old broken piano. Listen to her play." Then she posted it. The first hour, nothing much happened. A few likes from her friends. A couple of comments saying the video was nice. Rosa went to sleep, thinking that maybe she had been wrong. Maybe nobody cared about an old woman playing a broken piano. She woke up to chaos. Her phone had crashed from notifications. When she finally got it working again, she could not believe what she was seeing. The video had been shared thousands of times overnight. Then tens of thousands. By noon, it had crossed 1 million views. By evening, it was at 5 million, and still climbing. The comments were endless. People from all over the Philippines were watching, then people from other countries. The video was being shared in languages Rosa could not even read. "I am crying at work right now. Who is this woman? She plays better than professionals I have seen. The way she plays around the broken keys. She is not letting anything stop her. This is what resilience looks like. I have not cried like this in years. There is so much pain and so much beauty in her playing. Someone please find this woman. She deserves to be on a real stage." News stations started calling. Rosa did not know how they got her number, but they did. Reporters wanted to know everything. Who was the woman in the video? Where did she live? What was her story? Rosa did not know what to do. She had not told Maria about the video yet. She had been too scared. But now, there was no hiding it. The whole country was talking about the cleaning woman from Tondo who played piano like an angel. That evening, Rosa knocked on Maria's door. When Maria opened it, Rosa could see the confusion on her face. There were other people in the hallway now. Neighbors who had never spoken to Maria before were suddenly interested in her. Someone was holding a phone up, trying to take a picture. "What is happening?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. Rosa took a deep breath. "I need to show you something," she said. "Please do not be angry with me." She showed Maria the video. She showed her the view count, which had now passed 8 million. She showed her the comments, scrolling through them one by one. Watching Maria's face change, from confusion to disbelief to something Rosa could not name. Maria's hands covered her mouth. Tears spilled from her eyes. "This is me?" she whispered. "All these people watched me play?" "Not just watched," Rosa said. "They felt something. You made them feel something." The next few days were a blur. Journalists came to the apartment building. Television cameras set up in the narrow hallway. Maria, who had spent her whole life trying to be invisible, suddenly could not escape the spotlight. At first, she wanted to hide. She refused interviews. She would not open her door. She told Rosa that she was just a cleaning woman, that she did not deserve all this attention, that people would forget about her soon anyway. But the world did not forget. The video kept spreading. Musicians started sharing it, adding their own comments about Maria's technique, her emotion, her natural gift. Famous pianists from other countries said they were moved to tears. A hashtag started trending with Maria's name and the neighborhood where she lived. People started calling her story a symbol of every dream that had been stolen by poverty, every talent that had been buried by circumstance. And then, 1 week after the video was posted, Maria received a phone call that would change everything. It was from the National Concert Hall. The same place where she had mopped floors for 33 years. The same place where she had dusted the Steinway piano she was never allowed to play. They wanted her to perform. On stage. In front of the whole country. Maria listened to the voice on the phone, and for a long moment, she could not speak. She looked at her rough hands, at her small apartment, at the broken piano that had brought her back to life. And she did not know what to say. Maria said no. She said no to the concert hall. She said no to the television interviews. She said no to the newspaper reporters who kept knocking on her door. She said no to everything and everyone who tried to pull her out of the shadows she had lived in for so long. "I am just a cleaning woman," she told Rosa through her door, refusing to open it. "I do not belong on that stage. These people will forget about me in a few days. Everything will go back to normal. Please, just let me be." But Rosa did not give up. Every day, she would come to Maria's door and read her the messages that people were sending. Thousands of messages from all over the world. A mother in Japan who said Maria's music helped her through her grief after losing her husband. A young man in Brazil who had given up on his dream of being a musician until he saw Maria playing on a broken piano at 63 years old. A little girl in Canada who asked her parents for piano lessons after watching the video. Maria listened through the door but did not respond. The truth was, she was terrified. Not of the stage, not of the cameras. She was terrified of hope. She had learned a long time ago that hope was dangerous. Hope had been taken from her once before, and she did not think she could survive losing it again. Every night, she would sit at her broken piano and play. But now, instead of peace, she felt confusion. The music that had always been her escape now felt complicated. Every note reminded her of the choice she was running from. One evening, there was a knock at her door. Maria ignored it, like she had ignored all the others. But then she heard a voice she recognized. "Maria, it is me, your supervisor from the concert hall." She froze. In 33 years, her supervisor had never once come to her home. He had barely ever spoken to her beyond giving orders. "Clean this. Mop that. Make sure the bathrooms are ready before the guests arrive." Slowly, she walked to the door and opened it. He stood in the narrow hallway, looking completely out of place in his neat shirt and pressed pants. The neighbors were watching from their doorways, whispering to each other. He was holding something in his hands, a small box wrapped in brown paper. "May I come in?" he asked. Maria stepped aside and let him enter. He looked around her tiny apartment, at the worn furniture, at the clothes hanging on a line by the window, at the broken piano taking up half the room. She felt ashamed. This man worked in the most beautiful building in the city, and here he was in her small, crowded home. But when she looked at his face, she did not see judgment. She saw something else, something that looked almost like guilt. "I have worked at the concert hall for 20 years, he said quietly. "You have worked there for 33. And I am ashamed to say that until last week, I did not know your name. I did not know anything about you. I walked past you every single day, and I never once asked about your life, your story, your dreams." Maria did not know what to say. She stood there, her hands folded in front of her, waiting. He continued. "When I saw that video, I did not recognize you at first. And then, when I realized it was you, I felt something I have not felt in a long time. I felt ashamed of myself. Ashamed of how blind I had been." He held out the box he was carrying. "This belonged to my mother. She passed away many years ago. She was a piano teacher, and this was her most precious possession. I want you to have it." Maria took the box with trembling hands. She opened it slowly. Inside was a beautiful silk scarf, deep blue with delicate golden flowers embroidered along the edges. "She used to wear this whenever she performed," he said. "She always told me that music was not about being perfect. It was about being brave enough to share your heart with the world. I think she would have wanted you to have this." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her supervisor took a deep breath. "Maria, I am not here just to give you this gift. I am here to ask you something. And I am asking not as your boss, but as someone who has finally opened his eyes." He looked at her directly, his voice steady but soft. "Please perform at the concert hall. Not for the cameras. Not for the fame. Perform for every person like you who has ever been invisible. Perform for every dream that was buried by poverty and circumstance. Perform for the little girl you used to be. The one who loved music more than anything in the world. Maria shook her head, the tears falling now. You do not understand. I am not that girl anymore. I am old. My hands are rough from cleaning. I have not had proper training in almost 50 years. I will go on that stage and I will embarrass myself. I will embarrass everyone who believed in me. No, he said firmly. I have heard you play. The whole world has heard you play. What you have cannot be taught in any school. What you have comes from somewhere deeper. And it deserves to be shared. He reached out and took her hand, the rough hand that had mopped his floors for 3 decades. You have spent 33 years cleaning a piano you were never allowed to touch. Do you not think it is time you finally played it? John. After he left, Maria sat alone in her apartment for a long time. She looked at the silk scarf in her hands. She thought about her grandmother, who had given everything so Maria could learn music. She thought about her father, who had worked himself to exhaustion so she could have lessons. She thought about all the sacrifices that had been made for a dream that was stolen too soon. And she thought about the little girl she used to be. The one who played piano in a small village church while her grandmother cried happy tears in the front row. The one who dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. The one who had been locked away inside Maria's heart for almost 50 years. That little girl was still there, waiting, hoping, refusing to give up. Rosa knocked on the door again that night. This time, Maria opened it. I will do it, Maria said quietly. I will perform. Rosa's face broke into a huge smile. She threw her arms around Maria, hugging her tight. You will not regret this, she said. I promise you. Maria was not so sure. But she had made her decision. There was no turning back now. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. The concert hall arranged for Maria to practice on a proper piano. Musicians volunteered to help her prepare. A famous designer heard about her story and offered to make her a dress for the performance, free of charge. But Maria refused the fancy dress. Instead, she asked for something simple. A plain white dress. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy, and around her shoulders, she would wear the blue silk scarf that her supervisor had given her. The night before the performance, Maria could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with fear and anticipation. Tomorrow, she would walk onto the stage she had cleaned for 33 years. Tomorrow, she would sit at the piano she had dusted 1,000 times but never played. Tomorrow, the whole country would be watching. She closed her eyes and whispered into the darkness, Grandmother, if you can hear me, please give me strength. I am so scared. But I am also ready. After all these years, I am finally ready. Outside her window, the city was quiet for once. And somewhere in the silence, Maria could almost hear her grandmother's voice, gentle and warm, telling her what she had always told her when she was a little girl sitting at the old upright piano in their village home. Play with your heart, my child. The rest will follow. The night of the performance arrived faster than Maria expected. One moment she was saying yes to the invitation, and the next moment she was standing backstage at the National Concert Hall. Her heart beating so hard she thought everyone around her could hear it. She had walked through these halls 1,000 times before. She knew every corner, every crack in the marble floor, every spot where the light came through the tall windows. But tonight, everything felt different. Tonight, she was not carrying a mop and bucket. Tonight, she was wearing a simple white dress and her supervisor's mother's blue silk scarf. Tonight, she was not invisible. The backstage area was filled with people. Stage managers with headsets. Technicians checking lights and sound. Important-looking men and women in expensive clothes. They all moved around Maria like water flowing around a stone. Some of them smiled at her. Some of them wished her luck. A few looked at her with doubt in their eyes, as if they were not sure she belonged there. Maria was not sure either. She peeked through the curtain at the audience. The concert hall was completely full. Every seat was taken. She saw politicians in the front row, celebrities she recognized from television, journalists with cameras and notebooks, and behind them, hundreds and hundreds of ordinary people who had come to see the cleaning woman from Tondo play piano. Somewhere in that crowd, Rosa was sitting with her family. Maria's younger siblings had traveled from different parts of the country to be there. Even some of her co-workers from the cleaning staff had been given the night off to watch. A young woman with a clipboard approached Maria. 5 minutes, she said softly. How are you feeling? Maria could not answer. Her mouth was dry. Her hands were cold and shaking. She looked down at her fingers. The same fingers that had scrubbed toilets and polished floors for 33 years. In 5 minutes, those fingers would be playing on the most beautiful piano in the country, in front of millions of people watching on live television. What was she thinking? She could not do this. She was not a performer. She was nobody. She should have stayed in her small apartment with her broken piano, playing for no one but herself and the thin walls. She turned around, ready to run, ready to disappear back into the shadows where she belonged, and then she saw him. Her supervisor was standing by the door, watching her. He did not say anything. He just nodded once, slowly, and touched his hand to his heart. Maria stopped. She took a deep breath. She thought about her grandmother's words. Play with your heart, my child. The rest will follow. I am ready, she whispered to no one in particular. I am ready. The lights in the concert hall dimmed. The audience grew quiet. A voice came over the speakers, introducing her. Maria heard the words, but they sounded far away, like someone speaking underwater. Then someone gently touched her arm and guided her toward the stage. She walked out into the light. The applause started immediately, warm and welcoming. Maria blinked in the brightness, trying to see the faces in the crowd, but the stage lights were too strong. All she could see was a sea of darkness dotted with the tiny red lights of cameras recording her every move. She walked across the stage, her footsteps echoing in the silence between the clapping. And there it was. The Steinway grand piano. Black and shining, just like it always was. Just like it had been every morning, when she dusted it before anyone else arrived. But tonight, she was not here to dust it. Maria sat down on the piano bench. The applause faded. The silence that followed was so complete that she could hear her own breathing. She placed her hands on her lap and looked at the keys in front of her. For one terrible moment, her mind went blank. She could not remember the music. She could not remember anything. Panic rose in her chest like a wave about to crash. Then she closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother's hands guiding hers when she was 4 years old. She thought about the old upright piano in their village home, with its yellowed keys and out-of-tune strings. She thought about her father standing in the doorway, listening quietly, his face tired but proud. She thought about all the years of silence, all the dreams she had buried, all the music that had waited so patiently inside her. And then, without thinking, she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 floated into the air. The same piece from the video. The same piece she had played on her broken piano in her tiny apartment. But now, on this perfect instrument, in this perfect hall, every note rang out clear and true. Maria did not think about the audience. She did not think about the cameras. She did not think about the millions of people watching across the country. She thought only about the music and the memories and the little girl who had never stopped dreaming. She played with everything she had. 50 years of silence poured out of her fingers. 33 years of cleaning floors and dusting pianos and being invisible. A lifetime of sacrifice and loss and quiet hope. The music swelled and grew. It filled the concert hall like water filling a vessel. It reached into the hearts of everyone listening and touched something deep and tender. In the audience, people began to cry. Strangers reached for each other's hands. Even the cameramen wiped their eyes as they continued filming. When Maria played the final notes, she let them hang in the air for a long moment before lifting her hands from the keys. The silence that followed was like a held breath. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And then the president of the Philippines stood up from her seat in the front row. She began to clap. One person. Then another. Then the entire front row. Then the entire concert hall. The applause was like thunder. It shook the walls. It filled every corner of the building. People rose to their feet, one after another, until the whole audience was standing. The ovation went on and on. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It did not stop. Maria sat at the piano, tears streaming down her face. She did not know what to do. She had never experienced anything like this in her life, so she did the only thing she could think of. She pressed her hands together and bowed her head, thanking the audience, thanking God, thanking her grandmother who she was sure was watching from somewhere above. The applause lasted 11 minutes. People later said it was the longest standing ovation in the history of the National Concert Hall. After that night, Maria never cleaned another floor. The concert hall offered her a job teaching music to young students from poor families, and she accepted. A group of musicians from around the world raised money to buy her a new piano, a beautiful instrument that now sits in her apartment where the broken one used to be. The broken piano was donated to a music school, where it was repaired and is still played by students today. But more important than any of this, Maria finally allowed herself to be seen. She gave concerts at schools and community centers. She shared her story with anyone who wanted to listen. She became proof that it is never too late to reclaim a dream. 1 year after her performance at the concert hall, a journalist asked Maria what she wanted people to remember about her story. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "I want them to remember that I was not special," she said. "I was just a woman who loved music and lost it for a long time. Dreams do not die. They just wait. They wait for us to be brave enough to come back to them. No matter how old you are, no matter how broken you feel, it is never too late to sit down and play again." She paused and looked out the window at the busy streets of Manila below. If a 63-year-old cleaning woman can find her way back to her dream, then so can anyone. That is what I want people to remember. That is what I want them to believe. And that is exactly what millions of people around the world chose to believe. Because of her. Because of Maria.